The India four-wheeler growth story is driven by aspiration, right? What this means that India is not just growing, right? It is upgrading. And you have two buckets of upgrade that is happening in the auto space, right? One bucket says that 1 out of 2 people have shifted from a lower segment vehicle, let's say a hatchback, to a higher segment vehicle, which is an SUV. Likewise, we see that on ShareChat and Moj as a platform, 3 out of 4 people, which is 75% of the users, already have a two-wheeler and are either looking to upgrade to a high-level two-wheeler or to a four-wheeler, right? Now, what does this context imply? This context implies that as the nation is progressing and as the users are also, or the consumers are progressing, they're not just looking at auto as a mobility device or a mobility vehicle. They're looking at it from an aspirational lens and from an identity lens. And this shift that's happening in the users is not just economic. It's not just about income expansion. It is actually much more deeper than that. It is cultural. This means is that culture is now creating a very strong bridge to deliver trust and relevance. And the good thing about this is that if you look at a platform like ours, which is ShareChat and Moj, the native onboarding experience asks the user to just do one thing when you download the app, to select the language of your choice. That's the only question you are asked when you download ShareChat and Moj. What this means is that language as a targeting option is not probabilistic. It is not inferred. It is a deterministic signal that the consumer gives, which means you can actually reach out to consumers in the language that they're looking to consume content in. And here's where we as a platform come in, which is ShareChat and Moj. We are India's largest language-first culture platform. Across the two apps, which is ShareChat and Moj, we have a 200 million monthly active user base. We are present in 15 plus Indian languages. And the average daily time spent on the app is 55 minutes. To understand the consumer from the outside, think of it like a container, right? Demographic signals define the outside. It defines the age, it defines the gender, it defines where they are present, it defines how are they consuming content on what device. But the real stuff lies inside the container, which is how do they make decisions, what matters to them, what ticks them, who do they trust, when do they act. These are very, very essential culture signals, and don't get the idea that I'm only proposing the right side, right? In my framework, what I'm trying to say is that it's not either or, right? So if some of you are Mark Ritson followers, he has a concept of bothism, which means you have to do the left and you have to do the right. Basically, every episode in microdrama is between 60 to 90 seconds. Every episode ends on a cliffhanger, and that keeps the audience wanting for more, right? So the funny insight, right, to give you is that if an audience on our platform reaches the 4th episode of microdrama, there's a 90% plus chance they reach episode 50. Of course, not in one sitting, but at least 2-3 sittings. That's the stickiness of microdrama as a format. And the way I want you to visualize is that you have pure, dopamine-based scrolling on one end of the axis, and you have very leaned-in kind of OTT consumption, long-form consumption on the other end of the axis. Microdrama sits at the sweet spot in between, which is it has a storyline, it engages the user, but at the same time you can consume 4 episodes between your meetings. The culture pillars that we at ShareChat and Moj are trying to set up are, one is of course through language. How do you reach to our audience in the native language of their choice? Leveraging hyperlocal voices, which is your local influencers across deep pin codes. Culture, of course, can be expanded through microdrama, which is the biggest explosion in the content space that's happened in the last 6 months. And of course, leveraging not just the big festivals, but also the micro festivals and leveraging them well. And of course, since we are largely a user-generated platform, leveraging that to create stories that are relevant to the brand.